start to develop a relationship and connect with a player. Anytime a new player comes in for an assessment, I try to make sure I'm there. Learn their personality, their triggers, how their body works.
Hello and welcome to Ahead of the Curve. I am Jonathan Gellner, and thank you so much for joining us. This episode is brought to you by Baseball Cloud. Baseball Cloud's revolutionary software platform brings to life the numbers captured by TrackMan and FlightScope. This provides colleges, players, and facility owners around the world a turnkey product, allowing them to analyze their data using key metrics and custom visualizations on one intuitive user interface. Go to baseballcloud.com to find out how you can have your own data analytics department for your program. Data has a story to tell, and Baseball Cloud gives it a voice. On this episode, I interview Joe DeMarco, President and CEO at Elite Baseball in California. Joe's extensive background includes coaching at the University of Kansas and spending 2 seasons in the San Diego Padres organization as a member of the Peoria Padres and the Idaho Falls Braves. Joe is also currently a hitting consultant to numerous MLB and MILB players. And so on the show, we discuss how he trains batters for timing, focusing on finding the win and what good sequencing is and how we measure it. This episode is so good, and here is Joe DeMarco. Joe, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. Excited to be here and break down some hitting and break down some baseball stuff.
No doubt. And I came across your stuff on social media a couple of years ago and started following you, and it's really been awesome to see your progression through the game and some different things that you guys are posting and you guys are doing. And then went to the ball yard and hung out with Craig Hyatt and Doug Latta a couple of weeks ago, and they kept just gushing about how good of a person you are, but how good of a hitting coach you are. And after never having a conversation with you, I reached out and I said, I've got to get this guy on the show. So after having a couple of conversations with you, I know that you're going to be an awesome fit, and I can't wait to see what you're going to share today. But for our listeners who would like to get to know you a little bit better, just give us a little bit of background of how you got into baseball and what you're doing right now.
Yeah, I grew up in South Florida, outside of Fort Lauderdale. Out of high school, I went to the University of Kansas as a middle infielder.
Okay.
Played 4 years there. Was a pretty good college player. I got an opportunity to play professional baseball for a short time as a 28th round senior sign by the San Diego Padres. Did parts of a couple seasons, and then my lack of skill caught up to me at that point. And I kind of was, I got away from the game for 1 year, but I really missed it. I loved the field. It was something that it was my passion, and I was good at it. I loved going and doing work every day. So I reached out back to the University of Kansas, and their volunteer position, the third assistant, was open, and they offered me the job, and I went back and I coached at the University of Kansas for 2 years. So Rock Chalk Jayhawk for any Jayhawks out there. And then through the process of, I know you're Oklahoma, hey, Rock Chalk, baby. Through the process of, trying to network and kind of branch out, I always kind of thought about where would I like to live and, ideally coach, especially, at the high level college. And Southern California was always, what's that?
And I was like, and you didn't think of Kansas. That wasn't your first one right there.
It was not. No, I mean, hey, look, we were, my first year, we went to a regional when I was there. The year before I got there, we went to Omaha, but we weren't a very good team. I mean, I think it's more of a basketball school, as we all know. Coach Price has had some good years there, but there's some challenges, in that Big 12. I mean, there's some pretty good baseball there, in that conference.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I didn't. As much as I love KU and Lawrence, I wanted to get out to California. So I reached out to a couple coaches of mine that I had in the summer. One of them being Jason Gill. Jason Gill, currently the head coach at USC. The other is Pat Shine, who was a coach at UCLA for many years, who's in professional baseball. And they had just gotten the job at UC Irvine with Coach Savage. And I was, kind of trying to essentially see if I had any chance to move out here and be the third assistant. It was a new program. Baseball was dormant at UCI for 10 years, and they brought it back. So they had a full year of recruiting in 2000 to 2001. And I met Coach Savage actually in Nashville and at one of the coaches conventions, and kind of started the process of getting to know him, and did extended kind of interviews on the phone, and they offered me the position. And I moved out here in 2001 and was on the original staff bringing back youth baseball at UC Irvine. So did that for 3 years. And then and on the side, I was doing instruction. As the third assistant, you don't get paid. You have camps. That's really it. And I know that's kind of a big topic amongst the college baseball community now. And obviously, I'd love to see that change, and they get the third assistant, have a paid coach, and it'd be great for the game. So I was just doing a lot of instruction and doing a lot of lessons on the side, and it kind of morphed and turned itself into what I'm currently doing today, doing a lot of hitting specific instruction with players from I don't work with a lot of 8-year-olds, but we have 8-year-olds that come through all the way up through advanced major league hitters. So that's kind of the quick version of kind of how I got into where I'm at currently, being a hitting consultant and a hitting coach.
I love that, and I love that you went from Florida to Kansas, decided you wanted to get out to California, and so that's really neat. And again, it's not an easy road, and being the third assistant, I can only imagine some of the things that you have to do to get by and some of the hours that you have to work. But let's go ahead and talk with what you're doing currently. And so you guys have a new hitter that walks into the door. Or just say that I walk through the door, and I'm an 18-year-old kid and I'm an amateur kid. Okay. I walk into the door, and so what does day one look like for us?
Yeah, so day one, for me, I really like to start to develop a relationship and connect with a player. Anytime a new player comes in for an assessment, I try to make sure I'm there, especially if they're a little older, if they're in that going into high school or, maybe junior, senior, and looking to kind of revamp some things. So we do a lot of assessment stuff and just trying to learn their personality, their triggers, how their body works. Each guy has, different, body types and mechanisms, and they do different things. And I try to really be cautious before, any kind of correction or coaching, just kind of let them hit, get them comfortable. And I tell them all this, this is like actually something I got from Jerry Weinstein over the years. When we go about it, we do it like a buffet. There's a buffet, there's a lot of food on the buffet, a lot of options. So, you come in, keep your mind open to try a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. And if something you're not into on that buffet table, you throw it away and you go to the next thing, you try it again. It's something you like. It's like, okay, hey, I go back to that. I start gravitating towards, trying that out. So allowing kind of our drills and our principles to set in a little, get them to start to understand, the verbiage. One of the things I've really tried to do, especially with a guy kind of this, that 16, 18-year-old that comes in, is kind of already, they've already hit a lot. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to be able to just change them. If you spend a lot of time trying to correct a lot of fundamental things, instead of just kind of looking at them going, okay, what do they do well? And then let's try to maximize that. Let's get them into a good position to hit and just really focus on their rhythm and timing, and the pace and understanding, when things are happening in their body as opposed to what. And I've learned that through trial and error over the years. You spend a lot of time on the what with a kid who's already has habits developed. It's hard to, change them, especially in a scenario like this where, they come in once a week. If I'm at a high school and I have them every day, it's a little different, but, you have them once a week, and then you try to kind of lay out some things for them, to take with them after, day one. But really the first thing is developing a trust and starting a relationship with the player, getting them comfortable, just to, hey, let's just go hit. And especially if we go through a progression of tee, kind of into some toss and some dynamic stuff, I rarely will correct anybody on the tee. you just let them hit on the tee, especially because there's no timing as far as, the ball flight is concerned.
Sure.
And then wait until we kind of get into that next drill phase of seeing where they're at. So, that would be kind of how we approach it for the most part, with, myself and, any of the staff that we have, helping with high school age hitters.
Well, perfect. And so with the progression of different things that you guys are doing, you caught my attention with the when things are supposed to start versus the what. And do you mind just going into that a little bit further? Because I really truly believe that a lot of our amateur hitters have zero concept of when they're on time and off time. And so I think that I will probably do more training of that this year than I've done in my, this is actually year 9-year career, which is crazy. I'm getting old. There's not a ton of stuff that's out there that, besides representative design and making things game-like as far as timing stuff. So do you mind going into how you're doing that, what you guys are doing to train that, and just let's just roll from there? Yeah,
absolutely. So when I talk timing, I break it down. There's really two pieces of it. There's the ball flight timing, right? Meaning the point of contact, understanding where do I need to hit that ball based on, pitch, location, velocity, all the factors, which is the challenge. That's the challenge. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to maximize that margin of timing so that barrel's in the hitting area for as long as you can, so you can arrive on time at the point of impact with massive impact and all that stuff. But really, I think the root of it, where we spend a lot of time with hitters at all levels, is helping them understanding their sequencing, meaning sequential timing, how their body is operating, kind of where they can collect the energy, they connect all the pieces, and then they could spend that energy, flowing, transitioning the rhythm really in sequence. Mm-hmm. So if the sequencing is right, and for sequencing, just kind of the general overview, I would try to kind of talk about it from the ground up, understanding that, right, when you can work from the ground, where you get into that foundation and then let the energy work up through your core and building to acceleration and letting the barrel just release where you have, acceleration into and through the hitting area with the bat head. That's where we focus. So, there's challenges in, a cage setting to really simulate major league timing. Obviously we do a lot of things that are decision driven, mm-hmm, and to kind of focus on their timing there. But a lot of the stuff with sequencing and just ball flight, we kind of get them to understand, at least our focus is, how their body is operating and each guy's rhythm and pace. And if your rhythm and your pace is right, and you're not in a rush and you let things develop as a hitter, your timing sequentially is probably going to follow suit. And then if the timing is working, meaning, hey, I have some rhythm and pace and I'm gathering and I'm getting ready to go. And then the decision, and ultimately, I believe that the only decision you make is to stop your swing. So if you get a hitter to be in swing mode, but understanding that, hey, I need to, have a disciplined approach, be able to box pitches up, stay with the plan, and then just focus on their sequencing, mm-hmm, you're going to give them maximum margin in the hitting area for ball flight. So, the sequencing part, so we'll do drills that are rhythm-based drills. For example, I'll kind of go through one of the hitters we have at a high level. His name is Matt Chapman, and he plays for the Oakland A's. And anytime Chappie is at a sync, when we communicate, it's, hey, let's get you into a position, because he's very rhythmic with his hands, and he almost stalks the ball with his hands. So his hands are kind of his rhythm finder. And you watch him hit, he's kind of in a kind of an athletic position with his chest kind of out over, and he's tall, but he looks like he's covering out away. Mm-hmm. But his hands are his timer. And when he gets a little out of sync, his lower half tends to kind of go forward, and his hands get going too fast. So when we talk, it's like, hey, let's get your hands synced back up. And one of the drills he does is a basic step back drill where he gets into a position, he gets to his regular base, narrows up about 2 or 3 inches, and then just kind of lets his hands dictate, and then takes a little baby step back with his back foot to kind of feel that little shift into his backside before he unweights his front side to attack the back. So he can still stay a little more stacked up before he goes. So each guy has like different drills to focus on sequencing and their rhythm. Obviously there's a lot of them. If we're in the cage and, show you all of them, it'd be great. But I think the understanding of each guy's individual sequencing and that when is more important than what is kind of a general overview for timing for us that we'll try to, address individually with each player. But, knowing that timing it's always there, it's always part of the equation. And, and I think with a lot of players, they don't understand, and you mentioned it earlier, is when to start. They get started late. Right. And when you start late, everything speeds up and your sequencing speeds up. And then, it's an early turn of the shoulders and then you lose your barrel. The decision is already made and you're in trouble. Right. So if that pace is right, if you understand that, hey, no matter what I feel, if I feel early or late, I just stay with my swing. I stay with my swing. I say this to hitters all the time, is a little bit early, a little bit late, in the middle of the field with a little bit of air. Because if you're a little early, a little late in the middle with a little air, not high air, but just a little bit, those balls tend to find grass versus little early, little late, pull side ground ball for a right-handed hitter and that slicing ball that stays up in the air where, it's too high in the right center into right, you're out. So, if you maintain your body position and you understand, just your sequencing, then, the timing, which we're all focused on more than anything, is the ball flight timing. But we don't spend a lot of time talking about ball flight because that'll happen. You'll have a better margin because it's hard. I mean, that's the challenge, right? So we'll spend a lot more time with each player's, sequential timing and helping them do drills, the things that will get them more in rhythm, finding their pace. And pace is unique because some guys are, some guys want to go. Some guys are really controlled and deliberate in their gather of the energy. And you got to kind of help them find their starting points and let their natural rhythm and pace work. But that's one of the things we'll try to do is get them to understand starting point. When do you start? And that's the only thing the pitcher dictates is when. So a lot of mental reps on deck, even before that, 2 or 3 batters before you come up and locked into, just kind of the when. You see a lot of video of that, I obviously Twitter, I know you mentioned Craig Hyatt. Craig is the best in the business at posting content that is unbelievable to help. I mean, I use his stuff every day with hitters. Awesome. And, a lot of video. Yeah, right. I mean, it's awesome. And a lot of the guys, you see a lot of, they show major league videos of guys working on deck, working hard to find the when. And, if you focus on finding when, you can have some flaws with the what, and especially specific to, a lot of the players that we work with where we see them, we get them that they're already what they are. And we're going to try to make some changes, obviously, but the changes tend to be more timing driven than, what's going on. Obviously, if there's a thing that needs to be revamped, we're going to try to do that. But the first thing is timing, for sure.
No, I love that. And I love that that's, the first thing that you work on, because I feel like a lot of times we could probably pick out flaws that the player has, or pick out, things that don't necessarily agree with our bias. But if they're on time consistently and they're barreling balls, does it matter? But one thing that I wanted to ask you about, you keep talking about sequencing, and there may be some listeners who aren't as familiar with sequencing as we are. And so what's that definition for you, and how are you measuring it?
That's a good question. Defining it, I would say, just kind of understanding kind of when each body part is doing its thing and firing independently to control that wave of energy, meaning at some point, everybody's got to land. And most guys land into their toe first. So if I were just going to break down into kind of body part sequencing,
okay,
allowing, that when that lead foot hits, then the heel plant, then there's the stabilization of the head, which I think is really important. So if you're jumping from heel plant into head stable. So at that point, you've established an access. Now, for me, with sequencing, one of the biggest things is making sure they understand the horizontal movement of the lower half to stay, just try to stay horizontal after they hit the ground. Because when guys hit the ground and they go up and they get a little vertical move, that speeds the energy up and it bypasses some stabilization of the head. So, getting back to, hey, when the foot hits, the heel plants, at that point, the back knee is going to go first. I've always, this is actually something I got from Craig Wallenbrock and Doug Latta back when I first started, going up there and being a fly on the wall up in the valley in LA. They talked about two nails, right? Because they were like, one of the things that a lot of these more advanced hitting consultants and, gurus of hitting that I've spent a lot of time with, they've really tried to help define things and squash ideas of, not necessarily ideas, but sayings, the old sayings, the regurgitated sayings of, things. So one of the sayings, that we all heard growing up at some point was, swish the bug. And coaches are still saying it, like you get a 10-year-old coach out there with jeans on, they're saying swish the bug. And Wallenbrock did not like that at all. So he was, he created something, he called it, there was like the two nails. So there's two nails and they go through your back foot. So the first one is kind of into your back heel, like down through that. And the other one's through like the center of your foot. So after the front foot hits, the front heel lands, the back knee will start to pull the back nail out of the heel, out of the ground, kind of like a hammer would out of a wall.
Okay.
And then you would create that, what they would call that was the primary movement of the knee. And you look at hitters now, and Trout's the example. And Trout's a freak. And he's unbelievable. But you watch Trout, and I remember Bonds back in the day too. There was a lot of times their back foot didn't do much. It was just kind of back knee. And you'll see video and pictures of Trout. It'll be back knee, and it's like his hips have cleared enough to create, enough torque and tension. The back foot barely came off the ground. So that back knee pulling, driving kind of down and staying horizontal with the front knee, and then pulling that first nail out. And then that second nail kind of, you drive kind of into the ground and continue with your secondary drive, keeping all the energy working back into the access. So, back to kind of the sequencing part of it, where it's toe, heel, back knee, back hip, and then energy working through your core. And in the process, there's a simultaneous move of, there's three wheels kind of throughout the body that we talk about. I mean, they're so you got the merry-go-round with the lower half, kind of turning back into the front side after the head is established, stable as far as establishing the access point. The shoulders are starting to turn underneath each other. So depending on how much movement someone has down to it. So for example, like Cody Bellinger is, you look at belly swing, his lead shoulder is kind of level to slightly above his back. So when he gathers and gets ready to go, and he doesn't have any kind of shift back, he's just attacking forward. That lead shoulder works, down and kind of slightly in with him. I think Mookie Betts is similar as well, into kind of that attacking angle with their shoulders. So now you have an angle where your lead shoulders work down and your back shoulder can kind of start to work back underneath the chin and not allow the shoulders to turn east and west.
Sure.
They can kind of work north and south underneath each other, establishing, that access point. And then, the third piece of the puzzle, as far as the wheels, is I would consider kind of the hands, and the hands are kind of elbow to fingertip on both sides, and allowing those hands to, and each guy's a little different on this. How much do they turn and kind of ride to be able to kind of get slotted and keep your path where your barrel can stay inside your hands and run parallel with home plate, and have ultimately, if we bring it back to the decision, you have the decision to stop. I can say no because I haven't committed my barrel, right, because my sequencing is right and my body position has really, it's put myself where I can have good breaks. And all good hitters, especially when you're talking about the highest level, have good breaks. Mm-hmm. You need good breaks to hit. I think you need good breaks at two parts. One, that first piece of hitting into the ground and stopping your head, mm-hmm, and just, you gotta have that energy gathered and be able to, to match 95. When you're getting 93 to 100 coming at you, you got to kind of have that energy collected and be able to deliver it back into the point of contact. So you have to have good breaks to stop your head. And then you have to have good breaks to make that decision to say, nope, that's a ball. So that's something as far as the sequencing part of it. If you focus on that and you have them understand, hey, I need to start everything going, and then I work from the ground up and let the energy kind of work and kind of not have, so there's not a lot of effort to it. The barrel is just going to accelerate and move fast through the hitting area. So I don't know if that defines it to like a specific, I don't know if Webster would probably agree that that's the definition of sequencing.
Sure.
But in my world, that's kind of how we try to do it. Real life application of information, especially things that they've heard forever. So for example, stay short, stay through it.
Right.
The sayings, right? The sayings that people every day, stay short. And I ask the kid anytime they come in, we start to get to know them, and what does that mean to you? Mm-hmm. And none of them have the right answer. None of them really know. They're like, well, just short. And I'm like, yeah. Well, what? Let's talk about it. Let's explain why, what it means. And I'm like, and we always get back to, okay, it's distance and time, it's efficiency, it's understanding where your barrel is, so you can ultimately say no later and stop later. And when you have that, then you're creating time. And as a hitter, when you're focused on sequential timing, trying to create margins of the ball flight contact point, you want as much time as you can muster up through the process of getting going. Mm-hmm. And if you're efficient and understand where your barrel is and you're sequencing right, you're going to have better decision making. And if the decision making is good, you're probably going to be a pretty good hitter. At least, discipline wise, your on base would probably be pretty good, which is really important.
Really important. And you keep hitting the nail on the head, and I it's crazy how much that we're agreeing on some of the different stuff that you're doing, and I barely know you, which I think is awesome. And so we've spent like the last 3 weeks of our hitting sessions in the off season of just getting to a better spot whenever your heel does come down, your front heel does come down, and I'll tell you what, it's really hard to train that, but it does clean up a lot of different stuff on the back end of it, and stuff that I had overlooked because I had just overlooked it in the past. And you also mentioned that you're focusing on finding the win. And I did an experiment with our guys a couple of weeks ago and just asking them when they started and why. And it was amazing how many of those guys had no idea. And if you're a really good hitter and you just have that innate ability to be on time consistently, then I would be like, okay, well, you just keep doing what you're doing. But guys that struggle, that's something that I need to know. When are you on time? Do you know when it feels like to be off time and when you're on time? Do you know what it feels like to get your best swing off and when you hit and when you're seeing the ball the best? But I want to pick your brain about this because I love that aspect of it. So you specifically mentioned focusing on finding the win. So tell us a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I talk about win, I like to break it down, and as far as just easy things to connect the dots for hitters. So the first win is, knowing when you start the gather, as far as picking up your foot, like when you're going to unweight and start to, get into that good body position and that maintaining a good center, good posture. So I think when you start obviously is huge, but you got to have the relationship of the hand through the bat head, because I think that's part of the disconnect of, because they can start super early, but then what are they doing with their hands? What are they doing with their barrel?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes they'll start really early and they'll land really early and they'll be super stagnant on top.
Yep.
And they'll be, the energy and the sequencing of rhythm breaks up. And if you break that up, you're going to have to restart, and a restart's going to be a big move through the body, and you're going to lose your barrel, and you're going to be playing catch up. So I try to get them to understand, kind of two pieces. One, the barrel toe relationship. And then the other one is the knee and the knob. So, and each guy's a little different on this, but depending on how big their movement is, with, if they have, say if they have a big leg kick or just a real simple, kind of up and down,
mm-hmm.
just getting them to know, okay, when my foot, let my feet go first.
Okay. And
then my hands can kind of work behind them so I can sync up my barrel and toe. And this may sound a little bit weird because it really isn't. It's kind of one of those feel things of, so the term I like to use is the barrel chases the toe. So as you're gathering and getting ready to go, when your foot hits, the barrel should still be kind of chasing. If you're talking about something, you want to get someone ready to hit earlier,
mm-hmm.
Get them into a position so they're not breaking up the rhythm. So as my foot hits the ground, my barrel's kind of just getting to its launch and having an angle, a good angle kind of inside your hands. And
mm-hmm.
where then when the heel hits, I can start my sequencing through my core, and then I can kind of turn and go to get them into the ground. Because that's one of the things, I hear that a lot out here in California. A lot of the high school hitters, we kind of talk about what do they hear every day. And a lot of it is, get your foot down. I'm like,
right.
A very important part of the process, getting your foot down. But you got to expand on it of understanding when you get your foot up, and getting your foot down is fine. It's more about getting into the ground, getting stabilization into your foundation,
mm-hmm.
so you can have your backside and your big muscles in a good position where you have posture, and then you can go from there. So when you pick up your foot, the relationship of the bat head, so the toe and the barrel and the toe working together, and then with the knee and the knob, for example, so most guys have a little bit of there's a little bit of a move up with their foot. Like they'll have some kind of a leg lift. It's, where their knees coming kind of up a little bit.
Right.
Ideally their head stays on plane there. They're not going up with it. And that's something that I always try to key on with somebody that's off time as well, is do they push up, or do they pick up their foot kind of through their hip and from their knee, like picking it up that way and not going vertical with their eyes? Because movement of head up you're in trouble. Sure. Anything movement wise of the head you got to stay horizontal, or you got to go slightly down, as far as attacking forward. And I watch MLB Network every day, and all these guys always talk about, oh, look how still his head is. I'm like, it's not that still. Let's go, fella. Their head's going forward a little bit. You know what I mean? And
right.
It's like, it goes forward a little bit and it goes down a little bit. But that process is happening as they're getting ready to hit. And then the stabilization of the head, then you're in a position where it stops. You got to stop the head. It's really important. So if that first movement, if they're trying to sync up their knee and knob, if they're pushing up and they're coming off their legs and their head's going up, they're going to be disconnected. They're going to be in trouble. So if they're focusing on kind of a knee and knob move, where that's sometimes an easier thing for players to understand, because when the knee comes up, they can just kind of almost like kind of suck their hands in. They can kind of tuck their hands in and like tip their barrel a little bit. So it's just kind of knee and knob, like, boom, okay, I got it. And then when they land, they can kind of stay in rhythm and get down there early enough where they're not late. And it's so weird. And I say this to hitters all the time. When they're late starting and then they're playing catch up, they wind up being early, and they look at me like I'm just out of my mind. And I'm like, I explain that back to me. Help. I want you to understand how I'm thinking about this, because you're early sequentially. And then what happens is you lose your barrel. So sometimes you lose your barrel and you just panic button and you hit a big hop ground ball in the pull side, or you just get jammed so bad, the pitcher catches it. So it's one of those things where if you understand sequencing and understanding kind of when things are happening in relationship to your barrel, that you're going to have a better feel for knowing, hey, was I early or late there? And when I ask a player if they're early or late, the first thing I want to know, are they early or late sequentially? Or did you maintain, did you feel like you were in sequence, or did you give up body position and speed up at some point where you had to make one of those big moves with the shoulders, turning early, left to the left side for right-handers. And, right now I'm in the mirror with my bat trying to do this stuff. I got this bat when I was a little kid. I used to go, growing up in Florida, we didn't have many baseball opportunities. So we'd go to the Yankees spring training. And I'd go to Yankee spring training. I'd go to A-ball games, and I got to know some staff and people as I got into like junior high and even my freshman year in high school. And during spring break and during spring training on the weekends, I was basically a kind of a second assistant clubhouse manager. I would go in like once or twice a week, and I would help with the laundry. I would do the bucket. I would shag. I would help, do this stuff. So over the process, I would get, guys would give me stuff, and they would do a lot of fantasy camps there. And I have this Carl Yastrzemski bat from like 19, it was a bat he had. He was there one day at this fantasy thing, and I have his bat autographed. It was like he used it in BP that day or in game that day. It's got some marks. It's kind of sweet. So it's in my hands right now, and I'm, kind of going through this stuff in my mirror.
Of course you are. I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you got it, right? It's like, hey, I gotta go. I'm gonna break it down, on stuff. So, but I think just trying to help them understand your kind of body parts and within our kind of how their body, how their their swing's already naturally doing things. And you mentioned something earlier, which I'm a huge believer in, is if their barrel is finding the baseball, let them do it. Like, what do you need to change it? They already have because it's like, if it doesn't look right and they're still finding the barrel and they're handling, different speeds and they're doing it, just let them go.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes we look at it and, like we said, our bias of what we think it should look like makes us like want to change something when it doesn't need to be changed, because if they have a good feel for barrel awareness and getting the barrel to the point of contact with, a good position, having their mass behind the ball, let them go. Mm-hmm. No need to make changes on a guy like that,
right? For
sure. So
and you run the risk of, you mentioned earlier, you want to have a good relationship with them, and if the first thing that you're doing is telling them something that they're doing wrong, then I think that they know their swing longer than they've known us, and that's something that they're going to hold on to. But if we let them continue to do things and then they come and ask us, then we've got that buy-in that we're looking for. And I really like that. And something that we're really going to focus on, and we all need to, is the timing aspect of it and helping our players to understand it. So you talk with the player about it, but do you have anything that I could practically do and steal from you that we could do indoors this winter, when we will probably be doing some live ABs? We'll be doing some stuff in the cages with machine work, and obviously anytime that we're doing front toss stuff that's going to help with timing, we'll be mixing timing. But just from a timing aspect, besides those that I just casually mentioned, what are some different things that you like, and is there any advice that you could give me on that?
I think anytime you're doing a drill, whether it's a controlled, a front toss drill. So let me ask you this: do you guys do seated front toss if you're doing front toss as far as underhand, or do you walk into it?
So before I met Doug, we went to completely seated overhand front toss, and we do some flips now, just because the first couple of weeks we're working on the front, the forward move, and it's a little bit easier to get more reps with the flips. And we usually say a verbal as soon as they break their hands, just to make sure we're on time, because what we see a lot of, and sorry if I'm taking too much time away from you here, but what I see a lot of, and you mentioned and you mentioned this earlier, is I see two timing mechanisms that are bad a lot, and one of them is they rush to get their foot down, and as soon as their foot is down, like as soon as their heel comes down, their swing starts. So they're already out of sequence because they're rushing. And then the second one is they get their foot down way too early, then they have that pause, and then they're late. And the first thing that comes out from the stands from little Johnny's parents are, hey, you got to get your foot down earlier. So then they make it even worse.
Yep.
And so trying to retrain those two things, I mean, it's awful because we've got guys who swing when they touch ground, and trying to get them comfortable with that, that getting sat, that sink feeling is really, really hard. And then trying to retrain I call it the dip your toe in water pattern, or where they're just barely touching their toe on the ground.
Checking the ice.
Checking the ice to see if it's thick. Yeah, I know.
Checking the ice,
That's really good.
Yeah.
But I mean, trying to retrain those. But long story short, yes, we do a little bit of everything. I would prefer overhand seated, just because we'll be from not very far away. And if they stand up, the angle is too steep, I think.
Yeah. And we do a lot of overhand seated. We do a lot of BP. We'll do some breaking ball machine stuff. And we kind of vary that, where it's like, hey, the first couple rounds is going to be more decision driven breaking ball, where it's a good breaking ball. And the next couple rounds is getting them to just see. You get a lot of high school hitters. They've been trained growing up to not swing at breaking balls.
Right.
And you get to a high level, guys can spin a breaking ball in their 0-0 or 1-0 and cross count you, but it's just kind of a get it in there strike. So we'll do things as far as just setting that breaking ball up to be kind of an up out of the hand cement mixer. Just go. Hey, we're going here, man. We see that thing up, and it is let the barrel fly, and we're trying to do damage on the pull side as far as some stuff. But so we'll do a lot of just underhand front with a walk. So we're just kind of walking into it.
Okay.
And when we do that, it's usually, we're not doing a lot of regular reps with underhand front. We're doing dynamic reps. We're doing through movement reps, rhythm timing reps, or things with, like, we have a connection bat drill. We got connection balls.
I love the connection.
Short bat. Yeah, connection ball, short bat, long. No. And I'm not, we don't have like a big league budget here, but we use long, we have fungos. So, you hit with fungos, you hit with the heavy bat, different things. But so as far as a few drills, I think that would help them instead of, kind of in a controlled toss situation to help them with their timing leading into overhand seated, which I do a ton of with the pro guys, because you can simulate, you throw a ton of strikes from that short distance, and you can throw it hard where you want it. And it's going to kind of, make their decision have to be right. Because ultimately the decision is, needs to be right to have success. But so we do kind of a linear drive, which is, we just kind of narrow them up to like feet almost underneath the shoulders. And then we're just going to kind of let our hands kind of gather into our body and kind of create a little bit of an, move kind of to help establish the access. But we're not going to get any kind of a movement back with our hands. Okay. We're just going to let our feet go first and then have our hands just work right behind it and create that, like the term I've used is let your feet walk your hands into its launch.
Okay.
So you're just kind of letting your feet go forward. So you're basically you're adding timing for them. So you're adding timing going forward, but they got to be aware of where their hands are in relationship to a big move just going forward with their feet. And that helps them kind of understand, okay, when I start, because you're adding so much, okay, when I land, where are my hands? And give them some adaptability through their timing if they're a little early, a little late. And then one of the other ones we do, we call it, I try to use, and I got to kind of re-up some of these names of things. And we've used this drill for many years, but it used to be called the Longoria drill. Longoria was a St. John Bosco hitter, went to Long Beach State. Guys out here know who Evan Longoria is. And obviously still a big leaguer, but he's not Evan Longoria, Tampa Bay Rays, top 10 in the MVP voting anymore.
Sure.
So when he first came up, I don't know if you remember his setup, he was pretty narrow and kind of back into his heels a little bit and tall. And he kind of would like work down and just kind of almost like sink into his legs and attack forward. So what we do is we exaggerate the back heel kind of into the ground with the back foot in the air, and you're slightly open. So you're just kind of almost back leaning, like over your heels, standing straight up, and then letting the relationship of the knob and the back foot work together, almost like if you have a plug. So you got a plug in your, you got the plug on the bottom of your knob, and the outlet's your toe of your back toe. Okay. So the knob works into your back toe, and then you can feel that move working this way. And then it's like, okay, I got my barrel, and I got to kind of keep my barrel under control and understand that I need to move it really controlled and slow as I'm gathering and continuing to land. So I never lose my rhythm. I can essentially transition my rhythm from the ground all the way through my bat when I hit. So I'm not going to break up that when that early setup happens, when they land too early and they're just dead, that's the worst thing.
Right.
Because they have no chance at that point, right? It's going to be dead left turn. Yeah, no shot. So those are a couple that we tend to use off of that to try to give them a little sense of kind of timing back, where if they're a little early, a little late. You know, like you said, when you call out a verbal, we just try to have them pick something out with the coach, whether it's their first step or, you know, it's like when the ball gets, depending on how big their move is, you know, do they have do they have, they need more time to get ready to gather and get everything going. So, okay, you know, hey, when I take my first step, and it depends on the coach too. So we got 3 or 4 different coaches. I take, I'm a right, left, ball comes back, and then get it out in front. And I try to throw it on a good line and, down. We got some guys who just do a quick left, right, so their timing is different, and helping the player understand that he's dictating my starting point. So, if you have a little variation of that. So I had a college kid in the other day, and it was his first round, and he was kind of going narrow, and he's trying to really feel kind of into his back heel and into his back hip, and just control the stride forward, and be able to like hold energy without committing completely and then go. And the first rounds, I did it to him last week. He was trying it out. And I just started really adjusting my timing and going fast, and then like kind of hanging a little bit, and not necessarily changing the flight of the ball as far as, going softer, like, oh, hey, change out of the hand, but it's changing my movement with my feet. And if you do that, then they're like, oh, okay, they got to kind of learn to adapt a little bit to, the timing of what he's doing, because then it gives them a little feel for, okay, so you say you got a left-hander who's, really slow and deliberate out of the windup. And then guy gets on base, and every pitch is different. He's got a slide step. He's got a big hang and read. He's got a quick knee. It's like, okay, how do I train them to adapt to pitchers trying to control the running game? Because it's important. And you got these guys every day. You see them in game. Kind of any tendencies of other teams and pitchers. Kind of go, okay, hey, what can we do in our controlled drills to do that? And the seated is good as far as kind of changing speeds and location, getting them from short distance. We go from pretty short distance, and then we kind of back it up a little bit, but getting them to understand that it's not always about the result when you're trying to train decisions and timing. And I said this to a kid the other day. It was his last swing of the round, and it was kind of it was an overhand short, elevated fastball. So I try to give guys context of like where things are in space, right? So the balls are 2.5 inches right around. So we go 1 through 7 across the plate horizontally. So I used to do 1 through 6, but then there was no center point. And when you're throwing to a guy, and when I'm throwing BP, and I'm not sure how you are with it, but I'm watching the hitter. You know what I mean? I'm watching the hitter, and then I try to switch to watch the contact point. So I want to see when things are happening, his movements. And it's hard. But with 1 through 6 across, there wasn't a center point to kind of gauge where was that pitch actually. And then there's always hitters behind, and they can help kind of judge where the pitch was. So we went 1 through 7. If you get a little bit off each side of the corners across, And then we go 1 through 5 up. And the 1 through 5 up is every 5 inches, starting from their knees, 2 balls from the bottom of the zone, kind of bottom of the knee, all the way up through, call it their belly button.
Okay.
So you pick 2 and 2. So you box up a 10 by 10, right? So, okay, I'm going to go, all I'm swinging at right now is middle. I'm going center cut, M&M fastballs, and I'm not swinging at anything else. And you just kind of get them to train the decision of, hey, I'm just looking for that. And then you can go, okay, I'm spitting on anything that's spinning, and I'm locked into, call it a 4 across, kind of a 2 to 4 across, middle of the plate. So call it 3 to 6 across. So
okay.
From 2 balls in to kind of out over the plate and elevate. So it's a ball that I can hit hard and low into right. And I can also catch that, go pull side homer if it's, hanging breaking ball, or if it's, it's an elevated fastball. So we were doing this the other day, and the player, it was an elevated fastball, and we were locked into looking at elevated fastball out over, and he released, he caught it really out in front. He wound up pulling it foul. And he was like disappointed. I'm like, no, man, the decision was right. That's all that matters right now. We're working on a decision, and your plan. Now, this is important too, because your plan's got to match the decision. Right. If you have a plan and then you make a decision, it's like, well, they got to kind of correlate. You just kind of stick with it and trust that, hey, I'm going to stay with this plan and not deviate from the plan, because you get a lot of hitters that they completely deviate. One pitch happens and then they're like, well, I wasn't looking for that. Now I'm looking for spin. And, you get your fastball out over and you take it in your 0-2. So, trying to train things, with rhythm and timing, adding decisions in there through your controlled drills with, any kind of toss or a seated overhand, I think you're on to something. I mean, you're on to giving them a really good chance for things that are going to apply in game. And that's, that's something, if you can do that and you have guys every day, that's awesome, because that's what's going to matter. How's this going to apply to their in-game timing and their in-game, awareness of their barrel, so they can have success, whether they're moving a runner or hitting a pull side homer. I think it all kind of matters, and it goes to how you're trying to set up an environment to train them to get better every day.
Right, no doubt. And that's something that getting them to make decisions in practice is, they have to do this every single at bat and every single pitch of every single game. So I really think that that's something that it may be undertaught in a lot of different settings. I know that that's something that I didn't teach well the last couple of years, and just, it's vital, because, and I really, something that I want to hit on that you said, you praised the right process, even if the outcome wasn't exactly what the player wanted. And by you doing that, it sets off something that is in their mind, that I made the right decision. And that is huge. Like that's a big deal, because there are some coaches who, we do this in practice, and even we praise the outcome a lot more than we do the process. And for the player, that's what they start to gravitate towards, because in the end, they want to please you, they want to please me. And if we're praising the wrong things, then that's just going to set them back. And, anytime we can add a decision, a couple that we do that are really hard, just 2-seam, 4-seam, and getting them to differentiate between the two has really helped them to focus and hone in on looking for spin, because a lot of amateur guys, they try and pick up shape. And I think a lot of them are really just guess hitters. And so that one is really tough. And they have to, so a typical round would be like, okay, so today we're going to hit 4-seam and we're going to tape 2-seam, and getting them to differentiate between spin and shape and color is really, really interesting. But just anything that we can do, and especially one of the ones, and sorry for taking up too much of your time, but I love this stuff. One of the ones that we've done lately is I'll throw, and I'll say, I'm going to throw one curveball this round. And they go from just mashing regular coach pitch BP to like having to decide whether or not the curveball is coming. So
Curveball's coming, yeah.
And then
Totally.
and then sometimes I won't throw one, and it'll just mess them up the whole round, and they'll try and call me out about it. And I'm like, I mean, I forgot. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you, dude.
Yeah.
But,
Well, yeah. I mean, no, it's great, and we have the strike balls too.
Mhm.
We do a lot of fastball change out of the hand.
Okay, how do you do that?
Because and as far as just it's the same thing as the 4-seam, 2-seam,
Okay.
but short, overhand seated. The change is just easier to see. For me, the change was always a pitch that I was hoping a guy would throw me a change up
Mhm.
because as a hitter, it's just one of those things. I hated spin, but
Right.
a change, bring it. Change out of the hand for whatever reason. I knew it was a change. I knew it wasn't a fastball. Like that's a change, and to see it up. I didn't have much power, but I hit some homers on some changeups, and so I think it's easier to kind of see just the hand change a little versus because you're talking about 2-seam, 4-seam distance wise. If you're short, they don't have the velocity of the pitch may not spin the ball enough to give them a clear differentiator
Mhm.
of okay, is that 2 or 4? You got almost like, and if you're going to do 2, and I do this with the pro guys all the time. I go like, so Austin Hedges, the catcher, the Padres, we work out a ton in the off season,
Mhm.
and our whole off season design is about decisions. He is constantly working on trying to make better decisions and be disciplined in the strike zone and have the plan match. And so in the NL West, you get some guys who are those left-handed kind of back knee slider. They'll run kind of front hip, sinkers in. They'll kind of run them back in,
Right.
but it's something where you have to be able to hit. And obviously, there's a ton of guys in the big leagues that have that power sink, so you have to be able to hit the sinker. So I'll lengthen it out and I'll throw 2-seam firm, and I'll try to like turn it over a little to sink to give them a little more of a clear, hey, that's a sinker versus the elevated 4 spot. So almost trying to change. Like the box, kind of working to like the top of the zone with a 4-seam. If I'm going to miss with a 4-seam, I'm going to miss up with it. So it's a take. So it's a no. Or if I'm going to miss with the 2-seam, I'm going to kind of, not going to try not to hit him, but I'm going to miss in with it. So he's kind of trying to take away that chase fastball up and take away that hard sinker in and look for the one that starts. And one of the things that I try to do with these guys, and this is something that each guy's a little different. And you ask your hitters, I'd be curious to kind of get your feedback on this, and what their answers were. Because I ask our guys all the time, and they've got no clue.
Mm-hmm.
What are you looking at when you're out there looking? Are you looking at the pitcher? Are you looking at their label, their hat? Are you looking just kind of at the whole body? Are you looking at release point? What are you looking at? And most of them are kind of like, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. And I just kind of look. I'm like, well, are you like lock into something? Because it's amazing. If you lock in, you can see something that's a little off, and you may not. And I always try to go back to, before the off season starts, I always go back to try to get for the pro off season, which, coming up here in a month and a half for us, try to get my brain processing things that I've learned over the years and try to re-up on some stuff. So I just started listening to an audiobook, Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, which is an awesome book.
Great book.
Not a lot of practical baseball information, but it's one of those things where the whole overall premise is trust your instinct, snap judgment of knowing that you're right. Trust it. You know it. And it's just when you're looking at the whole picture and through his delivery and his timing, and if he changes something, if you're out there just kind of like watching that whole thing and then kind of shift your eyes to release point or whatever, you may pick something up that's a little bit different and you don't know what it was, but it isn't going to be a fastball. This is different. This is a different pitch, and especially your first at bat. If you see something like, nope, that's a breaking ball. Okay, what did you do different? I don't know what he did different, but it looked different to me. Just trusting that, right. Because it's hard to tell. Mm-hmm. Like, what did you see? Oh, I saw this. Well, hey, I was never that good. And a lot of the guys that, the big league guys that come through in the off season, they really can't tell me either. But having an idea of what you're looking at, whether it's the whole body, the top of the head, the label, and then shifting to like release points. So back to kind of the things that we were doing with Hedges a little bit, is he really tries to focus on release point window And wherever the ball comes out of really is a determining factor if the decision is going to be to stop or to continue to swing. Because if ultimately the only decision you're making is to stop, then you have to train your hitters to be in swing mode. Right. You got to be in swing mode, in yes mode. And I heard this from a scout many years ago. I did some work with the Indians over the years as an associate and did some underclass stuff. And there was these scouting dinners we'd go to for Southern California. And they're really cool. And they'd have really cool speakers. And one of the scouts that got an award one year was telling a story about a hitter. And it was his first at bat he ever saw him. And he saw him take a pitch with like intent and bam, stop. And he's like, said to himself, this guy's going to hit. This guy's going to be a hitter. And you can learn a lot from a tape.
Oh, 100%.
With a player, right? Like, are they committing to get in swing mode to be able to kind of match and then be able to say no late? And a lot of that goes back to their sequencing being right and, knowing when and where things are going on. But the window, it's like, okay, that window out of the hand is up. I'm going. If your plan is, hey, I'm looking for anything spinning up and be able to hit through that slider and catch those bad sliders and hit full side homers with them. Yeah. Hey, man, that's important. But, a lot of younger hitters and even some of the pro guys, they kind of don't really have, I think it's fine. One of the best hitters that we have, he's in AAA with the Mariners. His name's Eric Falia. And this guy can just hit. I mean, he's not real physical, but he can hit. He's the best. I wouldn't say he's Bell or Chapman, but just as far as just pure barrel to ball skill and base hits, hitting for average, he's one of the best guys that I've been around. And I asked him, he's like, I'm just kind of looking out there. I'm just looking at him. He's not really, he just all he focuses on is when. And like when he starts. I just need to start on time. I start on time, and he has this mechanism with his barrel. I don't know if you've seen Twitter. He kind of has that Twitter. He's got the Falia shimmy, they call it. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen that thing? It's kind of a funny video, right?
Yeah.
So he just does his thing, and that's an Andy McKay. That's his 15 seconds, and he's an interesting cat, man. He's a really cool cat, just an awesome person. But he just it's like him being him. That is 100% genuine. That is 100% him. That thing he does. But when he does it, it's to process and just clear his brain. And then when he gets in the box, he does two things. He looks at his barrel to go, okay, hey, there it is. I know where it is. He hits it, and then he kind of goes through his movement. But he has this, we call it the twirl. And when his twirl is late with his hands, he's in trouble. So he always kind of goes back to, okay, I got to start my twirl early to get everything going. But I asked him, what is he looking at? He's like, I'm just looking out there. I don't care. I really don't care what he's doing. I'm focused on my timing. You know what I mean? And It works for him. Each guy's so unique, especially when you're talking about getting a high level, of minor league baseball or into the big leagues. You gotta kind of be able to you just let them be themselves and help them kind of work through some things as they, talk to you about it. So, it's a unique position that I've gotten myself into, constantly trying to get better, be around advanced hitting guys, talk to major leaguers, talk to minor leaguers, and evolve into knowing what process and what things work for them. And sometimes it's just as simple as the verbiage. I think a lot of coaches, they don't evolve and change and adapt to their player. And I have a lot of different terms, a lot of different phrases, but sometimes I'll listen to a player, especially, when you get into a professional guy or a higher level player, and listen to what they say and how they process what I'm saying. Because when they say something back to you, you got to really listen to it, because that's how their brain is processing what you just said.
Right.
Or what you just talked about. So I'll give you a good example. Nick Hundley, who Matt Chapman referred to me, he was hurt with the A's this year, had a back, and he had a meniscus thing. And he came off the DL, and he was still, the A's released him, but he had a couple of weeks. He wanted to get fully healthy. And so we worked out a few times. And we did some workouts, and we broke it down. And I was talking about, kind of independence and freedom he did two things things I learned. Like it was awesome for me. Like this guy's got 1,000 or so games. He's a 13-year big leaguer. Like I'm going to listen to this guy and like learn when I spend 4 hours with him, in a week. So the two things that he said that really stuck out to me. One, and the way I've always said this term, I used to say, you want your hands to have freedom and space. And when he said it back to me, he said, oh man, I really feel my hands working with that freedom you're talking about in space. I'm like, man, that's the way you say it. Mm-hmm. I've been saying it wrong. I go, it's in, it's not in space, it's in space, And then it's funny, I was watching the NFL game the other day, and they were talking about this guy working in space as a middle linebacker. I'm like, yeah, in space. I'm like, man, okay. So I process. I'm trying to learn to say it better. But the other thing he said, I was talking about independent hands, right? You want everything to be independent. So everything's working, being connected and flowing in sequence, but they have to have their independent jobs. Okay. And I was saying independent, and then he came back after we were talking about it for a bit, and he used the term, I feel that disassociation. I'm like, disassociation? I'm like, I had to look it up. I knew what he meant, but for me as a coach and someone that, okay, if I'm going to be connected with this guy and try to help him in the off season, mm-hmm. I got to understand that if we talk about independence of the hands and the body part, my verbiage is not going to be independent to him. It's going to be disassociation. Okay. Because that's how he processes. And, each guy's so unique on that stuff. And you got to kind of really listen to your hitters, listen to, because, hey man, they're pretty advanced. And you're talking about, minor league guys and big league guys. And the more I listen, the more I take notes. I take notes on every session with hitters, mm-hmm. With the professional hitters. And I always go back at the end of the off season and kind of, we have like a Dropbox for all the guys. And then I have like their thing of notes. And it's like, what are the things that keep coming up? What are the 5 or 6 phrases? What are the keys that when we talk during the year, here are the 5 or 6 things. So like, I'll give you one with Josh Bell. Josh is more advanced left-handed. I mean, he's a little better hitter left-handed than he is right-handed. And we spent a good amount of time this off season on the right-handed side, but it's like he's going to take 70, 80% of his at-bats left-handed. So mm-hmm. obviously you're going to spend more time on left. But from the right side, the things that kept coming up as far as our terminology, our verbiage, our drills and stuff were into and under. And that's a phrase I use a lot. There's a lot of layers to into and under. But the basic premise of it is understanding gathering of the energy when you're working back into, if you're going to get a little shift into your backside without shifting a ton and getting, breaking the plane of, so think about like posture wise, you always want to maintain a good posture with, your head and your chest and really on your backside. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to ever shift past your backside, like out, too much over, what I mean? You want to kind of keep it, but there's a little bit of a shift, a little bit of a pendulum working kind of into it where you can kind of get stacked. You can feel it. Whether some guys are into their heel, some guys like it into their back hip, some guys focus more on into their scap. It just varies, but it's kind of into and under was the term that we always kind of were going back to because he was an internal rotator. His shoulders would go east and west, and he would go towards the plate with his left shoulder from the right side instead of working slightly down and then allowing the sequencing and the body. He's a physical dude. I mean, you get up next to him, you don't realize how big he is, and then how skilled he is with the barrel. And it's like, man, this guy's got some barrel to ball skill. He's not just a strong dude. He can hit. But right-handed, he wasn't putting himself in a very good position to allow his barrel to ball skill work. So the into and under of getting him a little bit kind of working down and then getting his non-dominant, which is his left hand, working a little more, kind of turning a little more. We did a lot of fetch stick work with him, those chuck-it sticks mm-hmm. from the right side, just trying to get his left hand a little more dexterity, actually from both sides. We did a lot from the left too. He loved it. Because he knows, that was one of the things he spent a ton of time this off season with, was working on mobility, flexibility through his left ankles, through his hips, everything on the left side, because he's super right-hand dominant. But you're talking about a guy who came in the offseason on a mission to make changes, and he committed to the changes, and he identified some things that he needed to get better at. And one was his understanding of the left side of his body. And on the hitting part of it, it was his left hand, his left elbow to fingertip. So focusing on getting that, that position where he worked that shoulder kind of down and establish an access where his left hand can kind of turn and ride a little more so he can hide the barrel and have better control of it and then release. And the focus was kind of a high finish. So when we went back in the communication during the year with him, if we talk about right side, it's always into and under. Let's get that high finish from the right side, because when he finishes high, what that tells me is that his sequencing is right and his body was clearing and creating freedom in space for his hands to work. You know what I mean? And then kind of releasing out in front and kind of finishing up. When he would finish across right-handed, I could tell he was internally rotating and his top hand was taking over and just the barrel was getting outside of his hands, and he was losing his blade and getting across. So it's just something that we would, hey, that's a term for him on the right side that I know now helps him sync back up and make an adjustment. So, each guy's so unique, and I try to really spend a lot of time one-on-one, especially with the major league guys, to kind of get to know what works. And each, it's so unique. Like Chapman is it's Monday night, man. Monday nights for Matt. Monday nights, he wants to hit from 7 to 9 p.m. on Monday nights we hit up at UC Irvine. He lives in Newport Beach in off season, and Chappie is he's a killer. I mean, this guy is intense and locked in, and we'll go in there and it'll be me and him. And there's times we're in there 3 hours, and it's just, I love it. I mean, it's like my favorite, we get all the high school kids out of there, and it's like, let's go, buddy. Let's set our week up with our first night of work. And this last off season, he was hurt. We didn't do anything except some video breakdown, went to dinner a few times. We didn't get to hit. And it's just luck of the draw that I found a few guys that are really skilled and really determined to be great. And they just like me. They like me enough to kind of keep me around. And I don't know if I'm, I think a lot of it is just the communication, just trying to talk to them and make them feel comfortable. And, it's like, hey, you connect with the guy and you try to, help them along the way. And, a lot of times they already know the answer. You just got to help them get back and trust that, hey, the answer to this. We just need to get you that baseline and work from there. So, it's, I love my job. I mean, obviously I love the opportunities I've gotten, being able to work with some of these guys, but it's also, we're in Southern Cal and we get a lot of good hitters to come through. So, geographically it works. So it's fun.
No doubt. There's a couple of things that I wanted to hit on before we let you go. And the first one, I mean, one of the things that I was reading an article about in The Athletic about you and Josh Bell, and Rick Eckstein actually started to use some of your drills. And Rick's a great guy. I got to meet him at a couple of coaches' clinics, shake his hand, and I think it was the first time was at 108 Performance at Bridge the Gap. But great guy, and it mentioned in the article that you guys shared some drills, and I'd love to know what you guys shared if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, it was really a cool experience for me. Rick contacted me, just said, hey, just ahead, I'm going to be out there, kind of making the rounds, visiting with all the, the Pirates hitters, and do you care if we come in and we could talk for a bit and we can talk about Josh, and then we can kind of work. I'm like, yeah, this would be awesome. So we met at the facility. We broke down some things. We talked about, kind of things that we're working on from each side of the plate. And then and we clicked pretty good. I mean, there was a lot of the similar principles, a lot of the same things that we're doing. So, and then, JB showed up and we wound up having I kind of took everybody off the calendar in the afternoon, and we wound up being in there for 2.5, 3 hours. And I kind of sat back and let kind of Rick go and kind of just break it down. And he, I was running the session, but I was just letting him kind of interject, and I was listening. This is a guy that JB is going to have to connect with during the year. And then we started just talking about different drills and things we were doing. So one of the things that, he gave me some insight on things that he wanted to do that I loved and we applied. And then I think vice versa. So some of the things that we were doing on that Josh and I were doing that I think Rick liked, that he was into. So one of the first ones was the hitting jacket, the heavy, the thing that slides up onto your kind of midway point of your bat. I don't know if you.
Yeah, I've seen those. We actually use those for
you're right.
overload.
Yeah. So but really helps players understand when they turn. And Josh is a guy, I don't know if you've watched Josh much, but he's got a lot of barrel movement. And it's like sometimes he gets going too fast. He kind of changes the movement a little. His dance gets a little bit. He'll do different moves, but he was losing his barrel a little bit from the left side. And so putting that thing on there kind of gave him a really good feel for turning. And when it got slotted, his non-dominant would have to kind of control that barrel a little more with 16 ounces extra on his bat. It would really help him control his barrel. And the term I use is you ride and hide. So you're going to ride your hands forward. So for coaches out there that use the term stay back, I've never said that. Well, I probably said it back in the day, but I'll never say it because it's just not true, right? I mean, it's something where you're not staying back, you were staying centered, right, and you are riding and hiding your barrel. So you're keeping your barrel hidden. Because staying back for me means stopped. It's like, oh, he kept his hands back. No, he didn't. He kept his hands riding forward, and his barrel was hidden. It's what Jeter made a living doing for 15 years in the big leagues, right? So it's something where you go, okay, I'm going to turn and ride. So adding that 16 ounces on there really give him a feel for his barrel, and he had to kind of control it and be efficient close to his body and having, a tight turn and then be able to kind of release. So that was something that JB still uses in BP on field. I think Rick was a fan of that. And then we're doing from the left side, we call it the karate knee drill. This is a kind of a modified version of a drill that I got from Doug Latta years ago. So, and we do it two different ways. So there's the full karate knee, which is kind of a really exaggeration of engaging the Ferris wheel approach with your shoulders and even your lower half. So you're going to kind of work down into a position. And then as you attack back, you're going to let your back shoulder really work underneath your front shoulder, and your back knee, is going to attack back up. And like you're almost doing like a kind of a UFC knee move, right? I don't think even kids know what karate is anymore. It's more UFC.
Sure.
So they're doing that knee move of everything's kind of working underneath each other. So that into an under approach. And from the left side, that was something that Josh really gravitated towards. And he liked doing it because it helped him keep all the energy back through the middle of the field and attack that way. And I think with, just being around, Doug over the years, that was something with him. It's keeping all that energy going forward and attacking back through, where the source is coming from. So those are two of the things that I think that, he likes, just kind of talking to him. And then a couple of things that I love that Rick, introduced me to was just keeping things chaotic during the decision part of it. So we were having him, a lot of times we would just kind of do a session all left-handed, and then we'd take a little break, and then we'd go all right-handed. And Rick was like, hey man, let's go back and forth, jump back and forth with it. Like, do your drills, do around left, go right. And then as it progressed through, we were doing decision things, short distance, firm BP, and he'd take one swing left-handed, he'd go to the right side, and creating kind of chaos in game, short distance, spinning the ball, doing different stuff. And a lot of it was just kind of helped me apply things that I do with some other guys into Josh's routine. And I loved it. I love what Rick was saying. And it was a really cool experience to have a big league hitting coach come in and really be okay with having, one of his best hitters, have an off-season consultant, have a guy he's working with. And, we connected pretty well. And then, he communicated with me after a few times, just checking in, and it was cool, man. I was like, this guy's a pro. Like he wants the best for his hitters, and he wants to help the team win. And it's like, it was a really cool experience. I know Josh and him went out to dinner that night. They went and grabbed tacos and we're breaking it down, and it was cool. And I was like, man, this is cool. Cause I've never really, until this year when I got some notoriety with Josh, and Josh was the guy that did it. I didn't, the Athletic called me and they're like, hey, I talked to Josh and, USA Today. I'm like, what is going on here? I'm doing these interviews. This is crazy. Sure. Because I've always been such a behind the scenes guy, and I'm fine with that. I love it that way. The joy for me is watching these guys have success, the relationship. I don't need to know. No one needs to know who I am. I don't care about that. You know what I mean? I want these guys to have success. And if I can help them any way they can to get to their highest level, that makes me, it makes me feel really good about my job. And, it's enjoyable. But, it was cool to be accepted by a major league hitting coach as like, hey, this guy knows his stuff. And yeah, so go for it. Keep doing what you're doing. And then he followed up a little bit. He's like, hey, how's it going? And, it's cool. I was like, man, this is a cool thing, to have a guy, really believe that what I was doing was good stuff and it was going to help, JB and ultimately help the Pirates have success. So, it was fun.
No doubt. I love that. And thank you for sharing. I know that there are times that there are things that you want to keep to yourself and share, but you've been just an open book today. And man, I'm sitting over here feverishly taking notes and trying to write down as much as I can without being a distraction. And man, it's been a really, really good session. But the last thing that I wanted to ask you, that you talked in the article about giving your hitters homework, and that's something that, especially this off season, we have them for an hour a day, which is, by a lot of accords, a lot of time in the team setting, in a high school setting. And I know there are colleges who would love to have that, but it's not enough time for me to make meaningful changes if they're not going out and working on their own. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you guys do for your hitters homework.
Yeah. That's, obviously it goes back to, taking notes during the session we do with the pro guys and during the high school sessions, we'll ideally we have them when we leave each night, pick 2 or 3 things. And those are the 2 or 3 things, whether it's a specific drill or a specific term or verb, verbiage that we're working on that day to, we encourage them to have a journal, have a notebook. And most of the kids probably don't, but then we can kind of, when we see them the next week, like, hey, what'd you work on last week? What were some of your keys? What were your takeaways for the day? So with high school guys, it's a little simpler. With the pro guys, I send them my notes from the day. And we kind of, talk about it. And then going into the next session, that's the first thing we do. We'll, sometimes we'll watch some video. Sometimes we'll just kind of break down, hey, here's some things. Here's kind of the agenda for today. And just giving them, some things to process and understanding what works for them. And I'm leaning on the professional hitter to come back and give me feedback about, I like that. I like that term. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's stick with that. The things that they say back to me are the things that I'm going to kind of continue to mention and bring up and gravitate towards as we progress through the off season. And especially with Josh, it was such a unique situation where we started October 10th. I mean, he was, I'm telling you, man, this guy's on a mission, and it doesn't surprise me one bit that he's doing what he's doing this year. And we went 4 days a week for the first 6 weeks. Awesome. It was like, we're going. And then, then we started, there were some other players adding. He actually connected pretty well with Tyler Wade, who is back up in the big leagues with the Yankees again. He's kind of been up and down the last few years. He's a first year I worked with him as well, and they hit it off pretty well. So they would go in, I'd go down to San Diego on Mondays, and they would go in together and hit on Mondays by themselves. And it was like, sweet, man. I love it. I love that you got 2 advanced guys making changes and going. And then I would ask them on Tuesdays when we would hit, like, what did you guys work on? What are some of the things you did? And then try to get them to, I want to know what they're doing when I'm not around, because it's kind of like, okay, hey, what are you doing when you're not watching? You have once a week during the off season. It's like, what are they doing on their own? And, trying to help them map out a little bit of a game plan with certain things and triggers hey, here's a couple drills. Here's the prescription, if you will, to kind of get you a little more consistent with this. Why don't you do, a couple sets of step backs. Let's do some short bat, low T work for you to maintain posture and to, have better barrel awareness. We can do a set of Longorias to, just kind of help them kind of understand what's working for them, and then what can kind of really help them take them to the next level in the off seasons, when they're working on their own at the high school level. Because you get a high school kid, they're going to go in there and they're just going to hit.
Right.
They're not going to have necessarily a plan, but if you can help through the process of what you're doing during your work and just helping go, hey, here's a couple good things to kind of stick with when you come in on Wednesday to hit, and you obviously encourage them to, do those things. But I think the homework will be specific to each player, but I think a lot of it is just kind of different drills, different triggers and things as far as verbiage that can kind of help them kind of understand, the principle and, the different things that they're working on that day. But it's, there's definitely not enough of it, that's for sure. As far as, but the guys who want to be, get to a high level, get to a Division I level, or potentially be a pro out of high school, they're going to run with it. They're going to do it. So you can kind of see them really blossom and get pretty good pretty fast if you're only working with them in a limited capacity. And that's kind of how we're set up for high school kids right now, because we get them once a week. We get them once a week for an hour. Some guys come in more, but not many, because they have pretty advanced high school, a lot of high school stuff is year round out here. So, we try to do the same thing with them to encourage them to, this is great to come once a week and get our work in, but where you're going to really get great is take this information and apply it to your everyday work. It's a quote I saw the other day. It was Michael Phelps' quote is like, what are you doing in the dark?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do in the dark? And it was like, yeah, man, that's when no one's watching, what are you doing? And those are the athletes that are going to advance through and get to the top of their game, whatever their, athletic abilities are. Those are the guys that you're going to probably win with, at the high school level for sure.
No doubt. Well, Joe, I would love to go further with you, but I think we're running out of a little bit of time. And if our listeners would love to get in touch with you and either break it down with you or just ask some questions just about what we talked about today, or just some different things that you may have mentioned, what would be the best way online that they could do that? Probably
the best way to track us down would be, through our website, elitebaseball.net, has kind of a background, has some of the staff stuff, but as far as directly, an email is probably the best thing. Would be info@elitebaseball.net, and that'll come right to our general mailbox, and we can communicate and do stuff. It's our business has been referrals, 100% really. I mean, we'll get some guys that'll email in, but players, it's the players who get the players, and obviously we'd love to be able to talk to people and break down hitting and have guys come in and try our stuff. And, but it's good stuff. I definitely, really enjoyed my time today. I know I mentioned it to you before we got going that I tend to just talk. Mm-hmm. My wife was giving me guff about it. She's like, "Oh, you'll be fine. You're a talker." I'm like, yeah, you're right.
No, you did awesome.
Hopefully well, thanks, man. It's my first one, my first podcast.
Perfect.
So
there we go. First of many.
Yeah, really. Hopefully it becomes something. But I really enjoyed it. I think definitely let's stay in touch on this stuff, and we can break it down anytime you want off air. I love it. This pumps me up. Like, I'm pumped up for my Saturday now.
No doubt.
To go have a good day after spending a few hours just talking shop. It's awesome.
No doubt. That's something that I look forward to every week, and you've made my week a little bit better, or a lot of bit better, really, because now I've got an entire note page to go through and break down and see how we can use it. But if I'm just going to open up the mic for you, and is there anything else that you'd like to tell our listeners before you go?
I think the biggest thing from the hitting side, you got to remember that hitting is hard, and focus on the positives, focus on the process with them. Encourage them to to stay positive and in their work too. I think one of the biggest things that you'll see with younger hitters is they always dwell on the negative. They'll take a great round, 7 swings are really good, square on time, and then that last swing they don't like, and they have they're all huffing and puffing about it. And well, why don't you give me that same positive energy on the 7 you love? Know that it's challenging to be a good hitter. Be patient with them. Stay positive with them. Be present. Being present, and making sure they're breathing during their during their work, during their games. I think will help. And keep doing good work out there. I mean, this is really enjoyable for me to share, and do some things that guys over the years have shared with me. We mentioned Doug Latta and Craig Wallenbrock and Craig Hyatt and I have gotten to know each other a little bit, and to make the baseball community and hitters better at all levels. But you keep doing what you're doing, and sharing information and putting together really good stuff. So I appreciate the work you're doing, and you have a fan and a friend moving forward. So I appreciate all the time and what you're doing, Jonathan, for sure.
Thank you for listening to Ahead of the Curve. You can subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, which could include Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, or YouTube. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please share it on social media to help get the word out. Once again, thank you for joining us.